screen starts glowing and the film starts rolling. You wanna be knowing what you might be in for. So give the show a listen and find out what you're missing. Put yourself in position for the easy good score.
Hey, listeners. Welcome to The Goods, a film podcast. This is Dan, and I have Brian with me. Hey, Brian.
Hi, Dan. Good to be here again. What episode is this?
I believe it's 220. I didn't double check, but that's the number I wrote down. That's why I didn't say it with confidence like I usually do, because I usually double check that I have the right number, and this time I didn't double check.
I think that's right. Feels like a big number.
Oh, yeah. For big and small month, Maxi-Month, Min-month. In this theme month, as conceived by Brian, we are discussing films that depict real-life objects, bigger or smaller than they are typically seen. I guess it doesn't have to be real-life objects, but the point is that we're dealing with an object we expect to be a different size than we're actually seeing it on screen. Or I guess if you were to say that more intuitively, something is depicted at a size other than what you would intuitively expect. And so this is the fourth out of what I expect will be 5 weeks for this theme month, as that is what we typically do. And what are some of the big and small things that we've discussed so far, Brian?
I think we've had a good variety. So people shrinking or growing or just starting out small or large, that's pretty central to this subgenre of film. And we've seen that in the movies that we've covered. We've had gnomes, we've had giants, we've had people get shrunk with spells, or genies who can be various sizes. And then, of course, we had a big animal movie with them, probably the quintessential big animal movie. But I'm glad that you brought one to talk about where it's things.
That's right. Yes. So in this case, the big or small item will in fact be large. And the item is not a living thing, but food. And that is with the 2009 film Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. This movie also got a sequel in 2013, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. In addition, I asked Brian to check out some more classic examples, iconic foundational examples of films, in this case shorts, in the things that are big or small department. And again, we're dealing with big things for these. So why don't we, before we dive into our subject at hand, let's discuss these little spin-offs that I suggested, and you suggested a counterexample. So the earliest film that I suggested, this was a 1901 trick film by an English filmmaker named James Williamson. And this is, I don't know, it's a minute and a half long. And it is called The Big Swallow from 1901, Brian. That is 124 years ago. It's pretty old.
Wow.
No one who is alive was alive when this film was made. Or I guess you might say everyone who was alive when this film was made is now dead. That's kind of a weird thing. I don't know. It's like film is a new enough medium that you kind of expect that the actors are still alive. Because most movies you watch, the actors are still alive. And most movies made, either the actors are still alive or they died in like the last few years. You know, it's like still kind of the modern context. But then you have these ones that are like, I don't know, predate World War I. And it's like, that was just this was during the Industrial Revolution. And like, it's not the universe that you and I know, Brian. I don't know. I just think about that when I watch really old films sometimes.
Yeah, it's a change in perspective.
For sure. So the premise of this trick film is that we have an actor on screen. I don't know if the actor is the director or if it's a different actor that he hired. But he slowly walks to the screen with his, I think he's being like beckoned. I don't quite know exactly what action we're supposed to take away.
My impression was that he was annoyed that there's a cameraman there.
Okay. So he's like yapping at the cameraman. That's what it is. And he like gets closer and closer to the screen, and he's got this big mouth. So when he's yelling or yapping very quickly, his mouth is opening, and so every time you open his mouth, you just kind of see a little bit into his mouth, like you're watching a film footage of someone. They're opening their mouth and pointing and yelling. There's like a little bit of a dark shadow in there. But as it gets closer and closer, you're first of all struck by the just very large mandible that this guy has. And secondly, he gets so close to the camera that it starts to be like unnatural. It's like he's up in your personal space. And then he's not just yapping, but he's like opening his mouth as wide as he can and leaning into the camera lens. And where this turns into sort of surreality that suggests alternate sizes is he like leans so far in and that it completely covers the lens of the camera. So you're just like, it's like you hold the camera lens inside the guy's mouth. But this filmmaker, James Williamson, has edited in a sort of clip of a cameraman in the dark getting his camera knocked around. And then the guy zooms out again. So we're left with like the illusion. Oh, and by the way, he like tumbles over as if he's being swallowed. So we're left with the illusion that this cameraman was literally swallowed and consumed by this guy that he was conversing with earlier.
Right. So on Letterboxd, the top review is, who knew that James Williamson invented vor in 1901? Which, if you're not terminally online, is like a fetish for being eaten.
I did not know that.
There is some weird stuff on the internet. You probably knew that much.
I did know that.
But I like the description on Wikipedia of like analysis of this film, because it does kind of break that illusion. It's like, okay, well, the head is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and eating the camera, and like if this were a found footage film, it would stop there. Like that's all you would get is the first shot. And I like the craziness of, you see the person falling down the pit, and then the final shot is the mouth closing and the guy backs off again, having eaten the cameraman. But the final paragraph of the Wikipedia article says, the film, however, might have still been more effective if Williamson had omitted the second and third shots, in which he cuts to the photographer apparently disappearing into a black void, and then back to the man who retires, munching him up, and expressing great satisfaction, since they detract from the logical purity of the first, ending on a completely blank screen as the swallowed camera is no longer able to function as a surrogate for the audience's point of view.
That sounds too subjective for Wikipedia.
That's the kind of passageway you get in a Wikipedia article that hasn't gotten an editorial pass over in a while.
Yeah. I also disagree. It really, if you're kind of dealing with the basic building blocks of cinema and actualities, like in really old cinema, like how did they conceive of the notion of breaking the fourth wall? Or like the filmmaker entering into the scene itself, and like doesn't that kind of defy intuition and reasoning? And this, yeah, it brushes up against it, because you're right. Like most of it, the time when the guy's getting closer, we're in the perspective of the camera because the camera is what's filming. But then we see the camera, which raises the question: how are we seeing the camera and the cameraman? If it was just the cameraman, I kind of get it. But if you see the camera, does that mean there's another camera filming that camera? And I think it's just supposed to be like you kind of understand that we're witnessing, that we've taken one step back and are kind of witnessing what previously was the filming itself, you know? But it does have that sort of like person's face and then mouth get abnormally large. And then we see like a normal sized person in there. And it has some big small effect in it. And yeah, it's got the fascinating what the hell is going on with our actual filmic perspective here.
Right. So it kind of feels like the next step from the train film. The arrival of a train that supposedly freaked people out. Oh, the train's coming. It's getting close and it's big. And it's going to bust out and get us. Which, who knows how many people actually fell victim to that illusion, but it makes a good story.
I've heard that it's like very certainly fabricated, because what was novel about the projection of the train arriving was that it was like a fully automated projection. So like there were examples of light shows and stuff. So like people would have understood the concept of seeing something moving on screen that wasn't real. But the fact that it happened actually projecting real film on an automated basis, and I guess maybe the photorealism would have been different. I don't know. I think we talked about this already. Wasn't that a selection for Train Month?
Yes.
So you can go, listeners, go listen to our conversation about Arrival of a Train. So anyways, that was the first one I suggested.
It has a nice brisk runtime. It's 1 minute and 8 seconds long.
What's the great thing about pre-World War I shorts, what's the name of the racist one?
Birth of a Nation?
Birth of a Nation, yeah. Pretty much anything you see recommended before Birth of a Nation will be in the 10-second to 10-minute window. You can crank through a lot of films, Get that letterbox tally up. Brian, you also sent me a Méliès trick film.
Yes.
So this is not Méliès, but it's in the vein of a Méliès. It's a trick film, is what you kind of describe these early things, where it uses some sort of manipulation of the film itself to achieve some sort of novelty that's one step beyond like the basic actuality of just recording what's right in front of you. So do you want to tell us about this one, or do you want me to describe it?
Yeah, so I recommended this one that's also from 1901. This was my first time watching The Big Swallow, and I think it definitely meets the criteria. Like, he gets close and gets large enough to swallow the cameraman. But it brought to mind for me a Méliès film called The Man with the Rubber Head. At least that's the English translation that you most often see. Also from 1901. And there's like this mad scientist, wizard type guy. Méliès was a magician. A lot of his trick film presentations are kind of structured as a magic show. And this guy sits down in like his basement laboratory place, and he sets a copy of, I think it's his own head, on a table, and then he pumps it up with bellows. So you've also got inflation here.
And the gimmick is, like, what must be happening from an editing perspective was there was one shot where they moved the camera closer and closer to Méliès's head, and then they imposed that over this other film stock of just this man, like you said, I think also Méliès, doing the pumping. And so it gives the illusion that his head is getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
And then it pops. And there's one of those puffs of smoke like in Voyage to the Moon.
Right, when the aliens get whacked. So I thought this was good. I think this was a slightly better distillation of the big versus small gimmick, like the unusually sized thing gimmick, than the Big Swallow, which is as much about like messing with your perspective as it is actually depicting something in unusual size. But I like this one. I like both of these, actually. So I think that was a good pull by you, a good contribution.
Yeah, you as well. I think they added to the experience of the week.
The third one is I don't think it's actually Looney Tunes. It's MGM, and I'm not sure on all the studios that were making animated shorts, but it is Tex Avery, which is one of the great Looney Tunes directors. So it may or may not be an official Looney Tunes production, but it's in the format that all will recognize as Looney Tunes. And this is a approximately 6 or 7 minute short called King Size Canary. And I had seen this one a lot when I was a kid. I think I've talked a little bit in our Space Jam episode recently about how I watched a lot of Looney Tunes when I was a kid. I really liked them. And this is one that I distinctly remember because it's got a lot that captures your imagination if you're a kid in this one. So, Brian, had you seen this king size canary before?
I think this was my first time watching this.
So, Tex Avery was one of the all-time great animated short directors, and he did what we consider the Looney Tunes styles of like little comic vignettes that have absurdity and surrealism, and usually talking animals and gags and stuff. So he's probably the one I see cited second most often, besides Chuck Jones. And I think Tex Avery, like one of his things was he was kind of horny. A lot of his had sexual either imagery or innuendos in them.
Right. So the mask, basically everything the mask is doing is Tex Avery. I think they bring that home. At one point he's like watching Tex Avery cartoons on his TV. But like you think of, oh, the eyes pop out of the head, the heart pounds out of the chest, the head spins around and blows like a foghorn.
Right.
That's Tex Avery.
And the premise of this one is that we follow this tomcat, I guess, this cat who lives on the street, and he's hungry. He's looking for food. And kind of the whole opening setup, the thing that I've found revisiting a lot of these Looney Tunes is they often spend like half of the short getting to what you think of as the proper premise of the short. Because you got to introduce the character, you got to have some gags setting it up, and then you get the setup. So this one, that is definitely true. We spent about half the short getting to the real gimmick that I certainly remember for this one. But he's a stray cat trying to get some food. He's the skinny little cat. And he finds a house that's empty. So he's going to break into the house. But there's this guard dog trying to prevent him from getting in the house. But he manages to evade the guard dog. I think he tosses some sleeping pills at him. So now we've met two animals. We got the dog and we got the cat. And the cat goes searching through the house, having trouble finding food. Finally, he finds a can of, I think it says cat food, and he opens it, and there's a mouse in there. And he's about to eat the mouse, but the mouse says, hey, later in this short, I'm going to save your life. So don't eat me right now.
I've seen this cartoon before, and I know that at the end I save you.
It's like, what do we call it? Predestination time travel? Sort of.
Yeah, a bit. It's kind of like Deadpool or something.
Yeah. So the cat doesn't eat him, but then the cat finds a bird in a bird cage, and the bird is really tiny and scrawny, and he says, "I've been real sick."
The delivery of that line made me laugh.
Oh, it's so good. It's very funny. And I think I read somewhere, or I saw an allusion somewhere, that this is not the only Tex Avery with that line, "I've been real sick," when you see someone unexpectedly small. So I don't know if that's true, but I saw someone say, and out of all of them, this is the best delivery of "I've been real sick." So maybe that person was just being sarcastic and this is the only one, or maybe it actually is a thing in Tex Avery films, but I'd be curious about that. Anyways, the bird is real scrawny, which is not going to fill a cat's stomach. So he's like, well, what can I do to fill my stomach more? And he sees this bottle of fast grow potion. I forget what it's even called. It's like, the idea is it's like stuff you'd pour on your grass to make it grow a little bit more or something like that.
Yeah, like Miracle Grow.
And he pours a few drops of it in the bird's mouth, and the bird grows not just like a little bit bigger, but like as tall as a person, like 6 feet tall, and gets not just that, but like this bulbous body.
Right, the distended stomach.
Yeah. Like he's kind of grimace shaped at this point. but like sort of leaning forward, like bent forward. And I remember I read about this short in a book, and it emphasized the phallic design of this bird and the subsequent creatures.
Okay, well, you're going there. It's firmly DeviantArt territory. This is more of this like internet fetish content. But I really like the way that the film escalates. I think this is a very good film. So continue on.
Yeah. So, okay, well, now the bird's big, but now the cat's like, well, I can't eat this big bird. The bird would just sock me in the jaw. So now I got to get bigger to eat the bird. And so he drinks some of it and he grows bigger. And now he's like, all right, I'm going to eat the bird. But then the dog gets the potion somehow. Remember the dog that tried to prevent the cat from getting in the house? He drinks some, drops the bottle. The bottle rolls up to the mouse. The mouse drinks some. And so now we have this four-way contest of creatures getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And every stage of the way, it's very well staged and well designed and interesting to look at, because first you just have it in a house where they're like struggling to fit in a house. And then they get a little bit bigger than that. And now it's like Clifford the Big Red Dog, where they're like the size of buildings running around a city and like leaping over roofs and stuff. And what are some of the escalations you were thinking of, Brian?
Well, you've described it well. The mouse comes around like the corner of a skyscraper and it's bigger than all of them and saves the cat from the dog. But then the cat is dwarfed by the mouse. So then like the cat has to get bigger to contend with the mouse now. And it just keeps going and going and going. And what it reminded me of was something like Return of the Living Dead, where in a movie that only ever builds, there's like no escape valve. There's no way to let the pressure off. There's no turning back. And so the only way that it can end is we get to the point where they're as large as the planet and they conveniently run out of the stuff, they say.
Right. The whole thing is just remarkably designed. And because like I said, it's always something interesting to compare it to. Like, oh, they're as big as a mountain. Oh, they're in a river, like doing a single bound over the Grand Canyon, or like over a dam. They're like doing hopscotch on a mountain range. And then it culminates with, yeah, they're looking back and forth, each sipping, getting bigger. Then they steal it from the other person, sip it, getting bigger. But at this point, they're so big, there's no comparison.
Nothing's around them.
Exactly. It's just dead space. And then finally, when it runs out, like you said, it zooms out and they are just standing atop planet Earth, like as big as, I don't know, a continent, and like as taller than the planet itself. And you get little Saturn in the background and stuff. And it's just a really terrific payoff. This super duper heightened, absurd, surreal premise that's just really pushed to its limit. My one disappointment is we didn't get more of the dog and the bird. It just it ends up being just the cat and the mouse. It's like almost Tom and Jerry parody or something. Actually, it had me thinking a little bit of the tone of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and how that relates to some other animated movies, because it's kind of still of the same ilk, but it also has this element of like postmodernism or parody to it too, King Size Canary really had me thinking of Katamari Damacy, which is one of my all-time favorite video games, which is all about you start tiny and you roll up accumulating stuff around you, and you grow as you roll and accumulate. And so you start out in the house, and then you're out in the street, and eventually you're picking up buildings, and then the Japanese islands, and then all the countries, and then you're in outer space. So definitely has this feeling. Has a great soundtrack. I was humming the Katamari Damacy theme while I was finishing King Size Canary. Yeah. That's a good connection. I definitely see that as well. So I thought that was good background for Maxi-Month and Mini-Month. I guess in these cases, it was all Maxi-Month. Well, now maybe is a good time to ask Dan, if you could be any size other than the size that you are right now, what would you choose? That's a good question. I think there's different ways to answer this question. So the first one is what, like, if you were to still be human size, what height would you want to be if you were still human size? So we've talked a lot about the height of people throughout the years on this podcast. We all know I'm a little insecure about being short. I have been my whole life. And genetics wise, I'm making up for it now because my hair hasn't turned gray yet, and I haven't lost my hairline yet.
Yes, you got nice, thick, lustrous hair, so you got that on me. Mine's thin a little bit. I'm gray at the temples like Reed Richards, but it's hanging in there for now.
My friend got mad at me. He's like, I made a joke about his thinning hair. It wasn't you, Brian. It was a different friend. I made a joke about his thinning hairline, and he got touchy about it. I was like, well, how come you could make fun of me for being short for decades? When this is like, to me, it's the same thing, you know? It's a genetic and unchangeable thing about you, and it's noticeable, and it doesn't make you more or less of a person, but it just is. But, you know, I'll be respectful of that.
So I was reading yesterday an article about leg lengthening surgery. Have you seen any of this? They've developed a way to break your legs and like put in shunts that then the bones can grow back. Apparently you can get 3 inches taller through doing this. And the previous articles that I had read was that it was really expensive, but just like hair transplants, apparently Turkey has a cheapo version that you can go to Turkey and get for only like $30,000, get this leg surgery. And 3 inches is a pretty big difference. I mean, whatever size, you know, if you're 5'6", 5'9" is a big difference. If you're 5'11", 6'2" is a big difference.
So there's this movie that came out this year called Materialists. It's by Celine Song. It's her second film. Her first film was Past Lives from a couple years ago, which was a Best Picture nominee. And I watched Materialists recently, and I didn't like it very much. I thought it was not very well written, but it's got some moments in it.
That's the one about she's dating the rich guy and the poor guy, right?
Exactly. So she's a matchmaker for rich people, and she kind of decides after she has this bad breakup with poor Chris Evans that she's only going to date rich people from now on. But then she reconnects with Chris Evans at the same time that she also hits it off with Pedro Pascal, who's rich in this. And she talks about the leg lengthening surgery. In the movie, they say the latest version of it, you can actually get up to 6 inches, which is just insane. Like, I almost feel like just adding 6 inches to your legs throws off the proportions of your body some, you know?
I feel like even just 3 inches would probably do that.
Yeah. But anyways, one funny part of the movie is apparently there's like a kind of scar that's specific to that surgery. And she sees it on Pedro Pascal's legs. And she said, oh, you got the surgery. And he says, yeah. She said, how much did you get added? And he says 6 inches. And she says, wow, so you're 6 feet now. You would have only been 5'6" before the surgery. And he said, yep, I would have looked like this. And he crouches down 6 inches and does little T-Rex arms. And it's very funny for like 30 seconds. There's not all that much that's that funny in that movie, but that made me laugh. Katie also read an article, my wife, saying that surgery was apparently really popular in 2020 because pretty much all these guys had this idea, well, if I'm stuck at home and I'm just sitting on my couch to do my work, why don't I have these leg braces and use 3 months to heal from this painful surgery that helps me grow 3 inches? Might as well use this time for that purpose. So apparently during COVID lockdown, this surgery was, relatively speaking, more popular. We were talking about heights, and so my answer is I would be a little bit taller. What's the song? I wish I were a baller. I wish I was a little bit taller. So that's my answer. But I don't know. Like, I wouldn't want to be goony tall, to use the term you used earlier. But if you could radically change your size, like maybe get really small, you know, just live your own life. It would just be lonely is the thing. I don't know. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, all good things. I think I would add a couple inches if I could. I mean, even just to be like 6'1". I'm in a situation where my younger brother is about an inch taller than me, and my dad is like 3 or 4 inches taller than me. And so, like, even to just add an inch, I'd have a little bit more parity there. And of course, there's just, to quote Breaking Bad, as I always do, there's a tremendous gulf between 5'11 and 6 feet. I'm 5'11.
Is there really, though?
I feel like there is. I am happy. I'm totally actually happy with the height that I am. I would not ever complain about my height. But if we're talking, waving a magic wand, wouldn't hurt to have just a little more. But as far as like superpowers, shrinking, growing, I think a lot of the characters who have the ability to shrink or grow, that's not the only ability that they have. They also have the ability to return to their previous size, which I would say is not a given. Like, if you say your superpower is you can shrink, well, can you also return to what you were before? Because that is growing. Like, you became small and then you grew back to the size that you previously were. I see that as two powers.
Oh, yeah. No, I completely agree. I wasn't even considering that. That would be way better if you could change sizes.
Right. So, and Ant-Man, he's named Ant-Man, but he can be small. He can also be big. I didn't know that until I saw the Ant-Man movie. Also, they're very inconsistent about the physics of that. Because they explain that the way that Ant-Man works, at least in the MCU movie 2015, is that he spreads out his atoms. He like adds or contracts the space between the atoms. And so he stays, the way that Michael Douglas explains it, you stay the same mass. And so you shrink down like man size to ant size, and you're working still with man mass. And so like if you're punching with like a little ant-sized fist, but you got 200 pounds of force behind it, he's like, think of the pressure of that. And so, okay, that makes one kind of sense. But then we see him grow to the size of like a locomotive, and he's smashing around, seeming to weigh what a locomotive would weigh. And it's like, that's not what you said. He should still weigh 200 pounds.
You can't have it both ways. Yeah, you'd be like blown away in the wind,
Yeah, you'd be crumbling. Yeah.
The allometric stuff we were talking about a couple weeks ago.
Uh-huh. But all of that to say, I think an interesting story would be a character who could do one or the other. They have the shrinking power or the growing power, but they can't go back the other way.
Oh, okay.
So they got to use it judiciously. They can do it at steps because it's like king-size canary. It's like at a certain point, you're going to have to draw a hard line because it'll be inconvenient to get any bigger or smaller depending on which direction you're going.
Right. Like imagine you were you and you're like, all right, I want to be 6'1", and then you're 6'1", but then now the girl you're chasing is dating a 6'2" guy. And you're like, oh, maybe if I was 6'2" and a half, or just a little taller than him, but now you're stuck at 6'2" and a half. You can't go back to 6'1". Well, then maybe you want to play basketball and you're like, ooh, these guys are all 3 or 4 inches taller than me. I got to be 6'6". Uh-oh, you're getting goony tall. You can't ungoon the goony, Brian.
Exactly right. But yeah, you put your thumb on the pulse. As I fell really hard for a girl who must have been like 6'1" at one point. And however tall you are, if she's taller, it's the world doesn't work that way. Not in this current climate.
In this economy. It's almost like it has me thinking of Benjamin Button. It's not quite that, though. Trying to think, it's making me think of something where it's right. It's, you know what it makes me think of is like a nuclear arms race of sorts.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking of the Butter Battle Book, which someday we'll have to do the Butter Battle Book, which is the Dr. Seuss book about the nuclear arms race. And it's like you can keep building bigger and bigger weapons, but eventually you're going to be at an impasse because you can't actually use them. And so then it's brinksmanship. It's the two sides standing on the precipice and not sure who's going to push the button.
But I think I am ready to talk Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
Me too. So when did you first see this one?
Well, let's talk even before the movie, Brian. This is inspired by a book series. So did you ever read these books when you were a kid?
I think I encountered this one on one of the like PBS programs that were centered on reading books, either Reading Rainbow or there was another one called Storytime. I don't know precisely where, but I remember like seeing it read on TV.
So the first book came out in 1978, but I definitely read it in the early 90s in school. I'm surprised it's that early, honestly, because there was a lot of books that came out in like the early 90s or around 1990 that were like staples in my elementary school classrooms. So I would have ventured this one was more recent than that. But 1978, this came out. The author, Judy Barrett, the illustrator, her then husband, Ron Barrett. And they released a second book in 1997. And then in 2013, they released a third book in the series. So the second book is called Pickles to Pittsburgh, and the third book is called Planet of the Pies. Notably, the third book, since it came out in 2013, came out after this 2009 film. So they were definitely cashing in on the popularity of the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs name at that point. But
so I have not read the sequels.
Okay.
I will say the original book kind of freaked me out. It is almost like not quite a horror movie. Reading up on the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs film, it said the directors were influenced by disaster movies, and that's definitely what the book feels like, is a disaster film.
Yeah. So the book is very strange. The movie doesn't really adapt the book. The book isn't barely even a story. It's just kind of like describing incidents where food rains down, and then kind of like the movie, in the book, the food gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And do you remember what happens at the end of the book, Brian?
They abandon the town and they don't look back.
Yeah, they go to a new world, a new town, and it's like a fever dream. Like, remember we used to live in a town where giant food came down? And it's strange. It's surreal. And I think they did a good job of picking and choosing stuff from the book to turn into a movie, because we've talked in the past, Brian, about how if you try to take a kid's book and turn it into something feature length by adapting the story, inevitably it ends up feeling padded.
Right. You have to bloat it somehow. It reminded me sort of the Polar Express movie, where it's like, okay, each page, you've got some kind of visual there, some kind of tableau, and more or less all of those are in the movie, but then there's also a bunch of other stuff that has to be invented. Right.
And I will say, I think the movie does an absolutely terrific job of working around that limitation. The story that it tells, again, is like largely invented. It's not like they just filled in some stuff. It's like they took the premise and some of the images and turned that into a movie. We could talk about real quick the two sequel books. So the second one, Pickles to Pittsburgh, I actually do think in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, they pulled some ideas from this because, well, first of all, it's got this strange framing story where, like, they talk about their grandpa who claims he grew up in the old town, and then he has a dream. One of these kids has a dream where he goes back to Chew and Swallow, which is the name of the town they use in both the book and the movie. And it's kind of got, this post-apocalyptic vibe with like these kind of machinery, high-tech stuff, like recovering and rebuilding stuff inside the city. It's kind of like we'll talk about the second movie. Did you watch the second movie, Brian?
Yes, I had watched it previously. I also watched it this week.
Okay, so we can talk a little bit about it, but it's diminishing returns, but it's strange, and it kind of almost reverses or like twists some of the imagery from the original. And then the third one, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 3, is Planet of the Pies. And what happens in this is on Mars starts to get the food effect where food falls from the sky. And I don't know if we're supposed to take away that like the original Chew and Swallow was also not on Earth. I don't think so. But they, the boy and the girl and their grandfather decide to go on a rocket ship up to Mars. And so now it's also got like aliens and space travel in addition to giant food. And so the imagery gets even weirder because you have like this sort of metropolis type imagery going on along with the giant food.
Wow, that sounds like the 101 Dalmatians novel sequel. Have you read about that?
No.
So the original 101 Dalmatians novel, my understanding is that it's rather similar to the Disney adaptation. But then the author, I think her name was Dodie Smith or something, that could be wrong, but she wrote a sequel that was like anti-war, where a space dog comes down and casts a spell on all the humans in the world to fall asleep. And so for a while, the dogs are running the planet. And basically the message from the alien is like, the day the Earth stood still. That isn't this better, because humans are warmongers and they will inevitably destroy the planet. And you should come back with me to Dog World in outer space, and we'll live a life of peace and leave the humans to their ruin. And then the Dalmatians decide not to do that.
That sounds totally bizarre. I wish they had made an animated sequel that adopted that premise.
Right, so it's totally separate from the other two 101 Dalmatians sequels that Disney made. It's not 102 Dalmatians, the live-action movie with the white Dalmatian who has no spots, and it's not 101 Dalmatians 2, which was a separate animated sequel.
Gotcha.
I don't know where I'm going with that.
No, I mean, the connection is that they went even weirder in the sequels.
That's right. Sequels go to space.
Yeah. And so my theory is that they should have, and I suppose still could, make a third Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs that involves space travel somehow. But indeed, the movie, so as I've now said several times, not a direct adaptation. And this movie was written and directed Phil Lord and Chris Miller. And this was their very first directorial credit. They had apparently written one of the parody movies a year earlier, but this was the first film that they directed. And subsequently, they went on to direct a bunch of pretty well-regarded films, comedy films, both animated and live action, and then have taken more than a decade off from actually directing to produce films. Although they were going to direct the Solo, a Star Wars story movie, they ended up being kicked off that project. But they have subsequently produced a bunch of films. And so the notion of what is a Lord and Miller film has tended to include the films that they're involved with the production of. And on that front, their most famous and regarded films are the two Spider-Verse films, Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse. I think they wrote and produced both of those, but it's got a lot of their DNA in it.
That makes a lot of sense. I still have not seen the Spider-Verse movies. I feel like I need to. I remember probably in 2014, in your Top 100 Everything blog series, you talked about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and at that point I had never seen it. So, like with other things in that blog series, I tracked it down and watched it then for the first time, and I liked it. This was also the year 2014 that they made the Lego movie. Wrote and directed the Lego movie, and I love the Lego movie. Like, I really, really think highly of the Lego movie.
Yeah, so some of their films, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and then for many years I thought of them as the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball guys, except they're making blank. At this point, their career is long enough that I don't think that's how they should be identified. But they made the 21 and 22 Jump Street, which are live action comedies that I saw both of them. I think I watched them both in one day or maybe a day apart. They star Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum. And I think it's based off of it's either a TV show or an old movie.
Yeah, it was a TV show on Fox when Fox first started being a channel, and it had Johnny Depp in it, young Johnny Depp.
Oh, interesting. But those are both very funny movies. And 22 Jump Street ends with fake trailers for all the possible 22 Jump Street sequels, 23, 24, 25, 26 Jump Street. And that's one of the funniest parts of the movies. And it kind of like cut off the possibility of them making more of them because they'd already said, here, the joke is that like we've made mini versions of what all of these movies would be. So I guess maybe at that point they had decided that they weren't going to make a 23 Jump Street and beyond, or they probably could have found a way around it. But I always thought that was kind of interesting. And then, yes, the Lego movie. So I also quite like the Lego movie. Still probably put it below Cloudy. As you mentioned, I included it on my top 100 everything. I also included it on my top 100 movies list I made not too long ago, a few years ago at this point. So we'll see how highly I end up coming up on it. But I quite like this movie, and I quite like, in general, the Lord and Miller storytelling style, which we'll talk a little bit about what exactly that is here. They're actually going to be directing a film called Project Hail Mary. So this is written by the guy who wrote The Martian, the source book, and it's being adapted by Lord and Miller, and it's going to star Ryan Gosling. And it's getting really good buzz right now. It's going to come out next year. I'm pretty excited for it. At some conferences, they've shown like 5 or 10 minute clips of it, and the feedback has been that it's really good. And people say the story is like the book is good. I haven't read the book, but it's supposed to be good. So I'm excited about that as well. And then, yeah, I think 27 is when we get the third Spider-Verse movie. And I really like the Spider-Verse movies too.
I think it would have been cool to see their version of the Han Solo story. I feel like it probably would have been funnier than what they went with. I haven't seen the Ron Howard version.
Yeah, I completely agree. They got fired for creative differences. So they've really built up a reputation for being difficult to work with, Lord and Miller, for cultivating kind of toxic places to film. There were a lot of reports in the wake of the second Spider-Verse movie that Lord and Miller were like pushing their teams really, really hard and were changing things, and then it had to be remade, and just having ridiculously high standards for everything, forcing people to rework stuff and work extra hours and all this stuff. I have complicated feelings about it. Like, obviously, it's like the most important thing is people need to be able to live their lives. You know, there's got to be ways to like make stuff that don't require crunch, they call it, like working 10, 12, 14, 16, 18-hour days, 7 days a week to get these things done. You hear about it when making video games too. But I will say that like the Spider-Verse movies are the most well-animated movies that in CGI that I've just ever seen, like by far. They're so well designed, so interesting to look at. And I don't know, if they can find a way to like maybe keep people's lives a little more sane, but also continue to produce at the level of innovation that they are, that would be ideal, I think.
Yeah. So this is a little random, but I was just remembering that I watched some movie where in the world of the story, Lord and Miller made a supernatural romance movie in the vein of Twilight. And I was trying to think, what movie was that I saw that happen in? And I've been Googling now, and it was in the 2015 remake of Annie.
Oh.
Where, you know, it's kind of race swapped.
Right.
And, like, Daddy Warbucks is, I want to say it's Nick Cannon, but I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I don't think it's Nick Cannon.
But they go to a movie, and the movie is this, it says it's called Moonquake Lake, and he's like a werewolf or an alien or something, but I don't know if Lord and Miller were actually involved, but like very prominent in the branding in this like 2014 into 2015 film is Lord and Miller's new project. And it's this Twilight thing. So I don't know whose punchline that was, but it's like, okay, these are known names. Lord and Miller.
Would definitely watch, by the way, if that existed. And I think it's Jamie Foxx.
Okay, that sounds right.
Yeah. So let's talk about what the Lord and Miller sensibility is. That kind of informs all of their films to different degrees. And I would say, first of all, their movies are visually inventive, particularly their animated films. It's a little bit less applicable on the Jump Street movies, but all of their movies are very well animated. And not just like technically impressive, like cool rendering and lighting and effects, but like the character designs are good. The animation style is like attractive to watch, really colorful and bright. The things in the movie have good designs. The camera angles are good. It's just like they have a sense for visual storytelling is one piece of it. I would say that definitely holds in both Cloudy and Lego Movie, and then definitely the Spider-Verse movies. Brian, would you agree?
Yeah, and it's very dynamic. It's like everything is always moving and in a way that is like purposeful.
Right.
So it's kinetic. It feels like a Looney Tune.
Yes.
At least this one especially, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
Secondly, the scripts that they write are, I would say, universally in a vein that I would call something like light postmodernism. It's like kind of halfway to a parody. It always like assumes that you understand the tropes and uses that as like a baseline and then builds upon that. And I would say almost universally finds some thematic ambivalence within. So like it's usually like questioning, but not entirely rejecting some obvious moral.
Right. So there's some ironic bits and some earnest bits. It's like there's real feelings here, but also they're like pointing out, they're kind of lampshading things. I noticed that a lot watching Cloudy this week. That like literally you'll have characters stating that they are doing a cliched thing.
Right. And yeah, so they get some of it in the humor particularly. Like I've read the term slap happy to describe the humor. It's very, very rapid fire gags. And I really noticed it this week when I was rewatching is like somebody's always making a joke. Like you really genuinely, you can't go like more than 10 seconds without a joke, I don't think. And it's pretty much all too. Like this is an extremely funny movie. But there's just no time for dead air because you're always getting a well-formulated gag. And it's not just one kind of gag. It's like some of it's verbal wit, some of it's like a pun, some of it's a visual gag, some of it's like a setup and payoff from something before. Just all sorts of jokes. And some of it is, it's like kind of doing a sort of Simpsons-esque. You think it's doing one gag, but then it goes a left turn because you kind of know where the gag is going, It's like I must be seeing double here, 4 Krusties type of gag. Or I see you played Knifey Spoony before. I think the funniest individual moment of this film, and we'll talk about the story here in a minute, but the main character named Flint Lockwood invents this machine and he gives you the acronym of, it's like the Flint, I don't even remember what it is. Flint Lockwood. It's like a bunch of letters and you're like, and as you can see, this reads as, and like in another movie, it would be a word. It would be like foodifier or something like that, where each of the letters was something from what he said. But here it's Fumadstifer. And it doesn't actually spell anything, but you hear him try to pronounce it a whole bunch of times. And it's quite funny. I laughed really hard. I think every time I've seen the movie when it gets to that scene because the delivery is so good.
It made me want to actually write the letters down and see how I would pronounce it, because Flint seems like he always says it the same way, and he's kind of got the incentive to sell it. Like, believe in this thing that he's made, but everybody else says it different every time.
Right. And to me, those are kind of like the defining characteristics. It kind of makes you feel smart watching these movies, but not in like an annoying nerd reference way. But like, things are going so fast and so casually playing with and upending and referring to your understanding of tropes and like gags you've seen before, that it like rewards you being a literate media consumer. I always feel like engaged and rewarded when I watch a Lord and Miller movie. And yeah. So let's dive into the story, Brian, unless you had any other preliminary thoughts. We've kind of set ourselves up here quite a bit, but we can dive in, I think.
Let's do it.
So the film follows Flint Lockwood, who's voiced by Bill Hader, a great SNL comedian.
Fear from Inside Out.
Yes, yeah. He always surprises me. He's one of the funniest interviewees. Like, if you ever see him get interviewed, watch it, because he's so funny. And he has like impressions and gags and stuff. He's just very funny, and he's charming. So he's great here as Flint Lockwood. But I would say like universally outstanding voice acting here, and like interesting voice casting too. So you have as the romantic interest a woman who's a meteorologist, a weather woman named Sam Sparks. She's voiced by Anna Faris, who for a while there in like the 2000s had the reputation of being like the most underappreciated comedian in movies. Like she elevated everything she was in, and she didn't get her proper laurels of super duper stardom when she was extremely funny. And so I think she was a good get, and she's pretty good here too. You have Andy Samberg being like an over the top jock type who's kind of in an extremely exaggerated way still hung up on his youth, to the point that he's actually like enacting himself as a baby throughout the film.
Yeah, the Bruce Springsteen glory days, except all the way back to being the copper-toned kid.
Right. But I think maybe the best individual voice performance comes from James Caan, Brian, who is, a great dramatic actor. He's in The Godfather, in many other great films.
Right, but really underrated as a comic actor. I think he's really funny when he does comedy. Elf is one of my favorite movies.
Is he the dad in Elf?
Yeah, he's the dad in Elf. He's the straight man. So it's Will Ferrell doing goofy things and James Caan being uncomfortable. But it's very funny. Like, every line that he has in that movie makes me laugh. And I think he's very good here too. As the kind of older-fashioned, more serious, down-to-earth father.
I love a good movie dad, Brian.
This is a dad movie.
This could have easily been a dad movie. Exactly what I was going to say. You have a couple of important dad figures in this, but he's obviously the best one. And honestly, like, the heart of the film is Flint's relationship with his dad. Because we see when Flint's a kid, he has a mom and a dad, and then we jump to when he's an adult and he only has his dad. And it kind of explicitly says the mom died, more so than you would expect from a kid's movie. Meanwhile, you also have, in more comic voice acting roles, you have Mr. T as a police officer, and he gets some hilarious line readings. You have Neil Patrick Harris as a monkey. I'm going to talk about the inventions here, but there's this invention that's like monkey thought translator. And so whenever we hear this monkey getting his thoughts translated, it's in Neil Patrick Harris's sort of manic voice, which is very funny.
And the things that the monkey has to say are very much in the vein of Noam Chomsky that we talked about, a month or so ago. What was it was Doolittle. We were talking Doolittle, and if you could talk to animals, what would they say? And that probably the thoughts would not be particularly literate or advanced.
There's a gag that gets used over and over again where the monkey notices something and says a word of the thing that he notices, and another character like interprets it as a genuine insight, and usually like it works, and so it's kind of funny. The last one I wanted to call out is the villain is a mayor, and he's voiced by Bruce Campbell, Brian, which I thought was, if you're gonna have like sort of a stunt cast villain, Bruce Campbell is about as good as you can do there.
Right.
And so yeah, the premise of this is Flint Lockwood, he's an inventor. When he's a kid, he decides that he wants to be a inventor, and his parents support him, particularly his mom. His mom kind of understands him. His dad is a fisherman, doesn't understand him. And they live in a place called Swallow Falls, which is known for its sardines. And they run into hard times when people discover that sardines are super gross. And then we pan to a newspaper that says sardines are super gross or something like that. It always makes me laugh.
So it's a fishing town. So this also has the like Rust Belt, postmodern American movie thing going on, or Rudy's factory town. But this is a fishing town that has crashed and is trying to pick up the pieces.
It's just got so many dynamics in this one film. It really blows my mind, because we're going to see there's like tendrils of like Indiana Jones later in this, and definitely you talked about disaster movies. It's just got a million things going on. But we kind of open with this montage of his inventions, and the inventions always go wrong, and it's kind of funny that they also get stupider and stupider as the inventions go. So he's like struggling to have his breakthrough invention, and every single thing that he invents gets repeated payoff throughout the film. And it's like in another movie, you'd have this opening montage gag of like, here are some dumb inventions, and you'd move on. But not here, because here we're just going to see every single one of the bad inventions repeatedly throughout the film, multiple of them making important appearances in the climax of the film. And I will say that this film is pretty much a masterpiece of setup and payoff. There's just so much of it. If you like it where they mention something and then they refer to it later, if that always tickles you, you're going to love this movie, because it does so much of that kind of stuff.
I did really, really like this time the television. So yeah, we get this montage at the start of Child Flint inventing things, and not only are they unnecessary, they're like harmful. At least at first blush, they're causing problems. They're not solving problems. But one of the things is, he says remote control television, but it's like extra steps. It's like Rube Goldberg, that instead of using a remote control that already exists to sit on your couch and control the TV, you make the TV walk across the room to you, and then you can reach the buttons. But then the TV develops a mind of its own and runs off into the night. And just every time that you see the TV run by, it does something that contributes in a non-negligible way to the plot and the experience of the film.
Exactly. And that's all based on like literally a 5 to 10 second gag from this montage. Another one is the James Caan dad character. Incredible character design. He's got essentially 2 horizontal lines across his face. He's got a thick single eyebrow and a thick mustache, and then this kind of broad nose in between. And then he's got a completely bald head. So you almost never actually see his eyes. And the few times you do, it's always memorable. But one of the inventions is a hair unbalder, where he squirts it on the dad's face. And like, it doesn't just grow him hair, it grows him a lot of hair fast. But it like inverts his hair. His eyebrows aren't there anymore, so you can see his eyes. And it's like a 5-second visual gag. The first invention we see is spray-on shoes, and this one always makes me cringe. It makes my skin crawl, Brian. So he's like, "All right, well, if you're tired of tying your shoes, just spray on your shoes." And it's like this sort of like plasticky spray out of a spray paint can, and you put it on your feet, and then you have this really nice skin tight shoes. But then immediately he realizes, and the class makes fun of him, that you can't actually take them off once they've been sprayed on you. So his feet are stuck forever with them on.
And then it jumps, 15 years in the future, and he's still got these shoes on, which... So he's never been able to wash his feet. His whole life since he was, 8. This is horrifying. Also, I guess it must be, rubbery or flexible or something so that his feet were able to grow. He would have been really screwed if the shoes couldn't grow.
Really makes you question it quite a bit. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that if you start thinking it through, how come the food didn't get more gross when it hit the ground?
Oh, this town would smell terrible.
And then the last invention we see, remember, they're all going bad and they're all misconceived, but the very last one is rat birds. So it's rats merged with birds. And at this point, you're like, why would anyone think that that's a good idea? And as soon as he debuts them, they go crazy and they fly away. And so now throughout the rest of the film, we're going to see a little flock of rat birds flying around. And it makes me smile every single time, Brian.
Right, because it's absurd, but also every time they show up, it's like a little jump scare. But then you got the humor of whatever they're doing.
And just the silliness of who would come up with rat birds is so dumb. The film opens with, after this sort of montage of a big day in the town, Swallow Falls, where the mayor, who we gather right away is the greedy, villainous type, gluttonous, you might say, for power. And he is planning this thing to line his pockets and make the city famous. And that is a theme park, and a sardine-themed theme park, which is obviously a terrible idea. And this just so happens to be the day that Flint is going to debut his next invention, which is the Flindismodfer. I forget how he even says it. FLDSMDFR. And what this machine does is it turns water into food, Brian.
Yes. This doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
So, okay, we've got in the children's book that food falls from the sky, and then we're kind of reverse engineering that. It's we know that that's the point that you need to get to if you're making a movie of the book. And so what is the explanation you come up with? Well, they're turning water into food, but food has energy in it. It has organic compounds in it, unless you're just eating a bowl of salt or something. Something that was once alive is in the food, and that's what makes it food, is you eat it and it gives you energy to your cells. But water doesn't have that.
No. I mean, I guess with sufficient energy, you could rearrange the atoms. A hydrogen atom could become a carbon atom or a nitrogen atom. So hypothetically you could, but no, just hydrogen and oxygen is not sufficient to make a cheeseburger, And we also see kind of his lab. And his lab is very cool. It's like Dexter's lab, where it's kind of secretly connected to the house. And B, it's a good mix of actual gadgetry and then obviously painted cardboard to make it feel more lab-ish. So we have this other layer of humor here too.
Yeah, I was laughing this time that he's got these shower curtains with vault doors drawn on them. And I hadn't noticed that before. And so, yeah, some of this is real science, but a lot of it is the fact that he's been isolated in his room since he was 8, and now he's 25 and still in the same room.
And meanwhile, so here we have a little bit of 50s sci-fi texture too, because he has fake sciencey words and stuff that he does when he's describing his science, which is pretty good. So yeah, all these weird ideas bouncing around this film. You had asked Brian when I saw this film, and I realized I never answered that. And that was actually, I saw it, I think, in theaters, certainly multiple times, right after it came out on DVD. I got the DVD back in the day. So I've been watching this one pretty regularly since it came out. So during this debut of the sardine-themed theme park, Flint debuts his new machine, and the thing is, it always goes wrong. And in particular, his dad is well, why don't you just get a job, Flint. Why you gotta be an inventor? Why can't you be a real job? Come join me at my fishing shop, you know? And indeed, this goes terribly wrong. There's a whole thing where the cop, played by Mr. T, calls him a shenaniganizer, a tomfool, and is always trying to prevent him from doing a scheme that's going to make things go wrong. And as they're debuting this theme park, the Weather Channel sends Sam Sparks. And the arc for Sam is going to be, in addition to being like a romantic interest, she gets like reverse She's All Thatted, where throughout the film she gets nerdier and nerdier. So this is again like kind of subverting your expectation of the she takes off her glasses and now she's pretty trope. And she happens to be there when Flint's machine finally goes off. So it like there's this whole big set piece of the machine kind of exploding and bouncing around and messing up the theme park. And Brian, one thing you mentioned to me is that that you could tell it was a 3D movie.
Yeah, so remember, listeners, this was from 2009, and 2009 was also Avatar. This window in time, like 2009 to like 2014, all the big animated movies and like the superhero movies were getting 3D releases. And this was also when the Peter Jackson Hobbits came out. So it was this wave of like 4 or 5 years where the big budget movies were getting treatments like this. And I had forgotten that, or maybe I just never knew that Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs was part of that wave. Like I said, I first saw this when I read Dan's post in like 2014. But watching it now, I could just see that stuff was flying at the screen and really moving along the Z-axis in a way that I knew, oh, this was a 3D movie. You could go to the theater and you could see this in 3D, and I know that watching it flat, I'm missing something. Very much the feeling that I got watching those Peter Jackson Hobbit movies.
Right. Well, one thing I'll say, Brian, I think I mentioned this to you too, is one thing I remember about this movie, because I was really following animation news around 2009, 2010, 2011, was that this was the first movie ever released for 3D Blu-ray, 3D DVD for like people who had 3D TVs and the special 3D Blu-ray players, which you do have, Brian.
That's right. So, yeah, you need the special player and the special TV, and they were only really selling these in this window in time, this like 4 and 5 year window. So you got to have a lot of parts to make this work, but I have to track this Blu-ray down now that I know that.
Right. Yeah, so you kind of get some of that during that first big set piece. And then when the whole town is mad at him, but his machine flies up into the sky, and we get this just incredible reveal. It's Sam and Flint arguing, and like the sky starts shining pink and food starts falling from the sky, and everybody's looking up and gasping, and it becomes so drawn out it becomes a gag itself, where everybody's going for like dramatic extended periods of time, looking at food starting to fall from the sky.
It reminded me of in Lost Skeleton of Cadavra, where you have one person look up at the sky and say, I wonder. And then it cuts to somebody in a totally different place. I also wonder.
Right. And Sam is a meteorologist, so of course food falling from the sky would be a huge weather story. And so she's there as this starts happening. And before long, we kind of realize that Flint's machine has interacted with the atmosphere, and there's a lot of water in the atmosphere, the clouds, and as such is producing food nonstop that's falling down in weather patterns. So we get all sorts of interesting varieties of this, right? We get just like things that are just falling, like chicken legs and slices of pizza. And then we just kind of get, it's like almost particle effects. It's like, it reminds me of those sort of novelty viral videos where you'll see like a whole bunch of an object in like a basic 3D rendering type thing. Just a whole bunch of them falling, like donuts or something, just piling up on the ground, like a tech demo almost. But then it gets more and more weird. It's like, oh, well, now it's snowing ice cream. So the ground represents Neapolitan ice cream. And this is kind of horrifying, Brian. It's just very strange. Food falling from the sky.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about this.
So it kind of comes in stages. That the first thing that comes down is cheeseburgers. So at first it's, parts of the cheeseburger. It's like a mustard drop and a pickle and then bigger and bigger chunks, and then it kind of assembles itself, and then you've got full burgers falling down. And word spreads, oh, this crazy weather event, the weather girl comes to report, and then the mayor says, oh, this could be our new thing. We're not the sardine town anymore. We are the food falls from the sky town, which will be much more lucrative. And dangers be damned, like the mayor from Jaws, we're going to capitalize on this tourism. People are going to come and witness the food precipitation. And so, Flint, you're the man of the hour. Deliver us 3 meals a day. And that's when it really takes off. That, okay, there's going to be many kinds of food all the time.
So one thing I want to point out here is that we've kind of done a speed run of a very typical animated movie plot. I think of it as the Bug's Life plot, but it's in many, many animated films, kids' movies in general, where you have our hero who's misunderstood and causing problems, and there's some objective, and the character messes up the objective, but ultimately succeeds because once he and the people around him embrace what makes him different, his unconventional thinking, his unique approach to things, it solves the problem in a new paradigm shift sort of way. So we all need to embrace our individuality and our creativity. So like by the first, certainly the halfway point, almost like the end of the first act, we've kind of done the full version of the Bug's Life plot here. And so the rest of the movie is going to be kind of subverting that to some extent. Like that's where a Bug's Life ends. It's like, oh, he messed up the big thing, but then with his unconventional thinking, he saves the day, and through his new inventiveness, the town, the people around him prosper. And we get there really quickly in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, in time to question it and find limits to that. This is where we hit that Lord and Miller sort of ambivalence on a theme that I kind of talked about. So it's not going to entirely embrace progress and novelty for the sake of it. And I would say that theme, that approach to storytelling is even more pronounced in the Lego movie, Brian. Would you agree?
I agree. So in the Lego movie, if you haven't seen the Lego movie, spoilers, I guess, but there's discussion of, can we be special? And like, should we aspire even to be special? And like, are there chosen ones? Because a lot of like epic scale stories rely on that as a trope. And where it kind of lands in the end is that we may not be special, but only in believing that we can be or could be, are we able to accomplish notable things. So it's like we should believe in aspiration and we should believe in our own capabilities, but not like to the detriment of others. We should use it to enable and help others. Like pursue our goals and pursue the things that we're good at, but not in like a Randian way. It had a lot of ideas. The Lego movie, for a film called The Lego Movie, is incredibly cerebral. A thoughtful text in a way that I never expected when I went to the theater in 2014.
And I would say Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is nearly that dense. It's not quite so dense. Cerebral is the word you used. But there's a lot going on in this one too. And in particular, this sort of like growth, mindless growth approach that we associate with capitalism, in particular big tech, is kind of deconstructed here.
Yeah, it's kind of got the feeling of the Lorax that came out a few years later. Just this menace that kind of grows out of something that's framed positively at first, and then the corporate overlords get their claws in, and it spins out of control, and everything is ruined. And was it ever a good idea in the first place?
Because what happens is the longer this machine runs, the more intensely it gets used, the more unstable the machine gets, and therefore, in particular, the food gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so the gags change. At first, it's just like, oh, people are dodging falling slices of pizza. But then it's like, oh, scoops of ice cream as big as a house that people can sled down. And there's this just horrifying, grotesque element to giant food. Not just giant food, but like imposing itself. It doesn't go away. It falls, and it's like there almost. You use the term jump scare, and I don't know, Brian. I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but like the sort of grossness of it adds this extra just tactile comic dimension to the film, like giant stakes and stuff falling.
Right, I want to talk about the stakes. So the whole town gets the same meal at the same time. And you think about food is kind of like a very personal thing. And you decide what you eat, and you decide broadly when you eat. As a household, you know. Maybe as an individual, but certainly on like a family basis. And different people eat different things. And yet here it's, okay, this is the meal for the whole town at this time. So that already is a little menacing. And you mentioned the steak. There's this great scene where, okay, Flint, who his whole life has been ostracized, has been this nobody, this crackpot, looked down upon, is now suddenly the big wheel in the town. He's like famous and well-to-do, and he's finally established himself, which ostensibly is what his dad wanted him to accomplish. Right? He hasn't been able to make a life for himself up until now. He's living at home as an adult, and now here he's made a name. And so we get this dinner scene where he invites his dad to, what is the name of the restaurant? It's like some name that suggests what it is, which is there's no roof on this building.
Oh yeah, I think it's the Roofless or something like that, yeah.
So it's like a classy restaurant, but the way that it works is no roof, so the food weather comes inside. And it's like, yeah, set up as a classy, fancy restaurant, but it's at the whims of nature. And like, it's kind of gross and off-putting and scary, but also a fancy restaurant. And Flint is like proud and brings his dad in of, oh, look at what I've finally done. Aren't you proud? And the dad is the first one to poke a hole in the bubble. He's like Reba the mail lady on Pee-wee, of the only one who's kind of outside the illusion at this point of, this is nuts. What are you doing?
Right.
So I loved this scene. This was very, very good as a turning point.
Yeah. And it's kind of bizarre because it like puts you in the perspective of the skeptic dad, who's normally like a villain character in a story like this. And his whole thing is like grinding up sardines to make chum. And it's like painting that as the sympathetic, common sense alternative to all of this.
It had me thinking of like the way that a Goofy movie works, where the son and the father are at odds, but neither is in the wrong. Like, you need to be able to understand both views for the story to work.
Great connection. Yeah, I completely agree. So one thing that's happening as Flint is kind of creating all this food raining from the sky is that the mayor is getting fatter and fatter. He's becoming the fat pig capitalist incarnate, to the point that he's got like one of those Walmart carts and he's like looks like a 500-pound land whale. It's unsettling to watch. Uh, Seeing him get bigger and bigger from scene to scene. And then throughout, just lots of creativity of like what it would be bizarre if giant food was everywhere. Like one that always sticks with me is it rains nacho cheese and it becomes a pool, and a guy just like lifts up his arm and licks his arm like he's in a hot tub. Oh, and he like has like chips nearby, and he just scrapes it off his skin and eats off of it.
You mentioned the Neapolitan ice cream, and I laughed this time that like there's a whole bunch of kids running around eating the chocolate ice cream and a bunch running around eating the vanilla ice cream, and there's one person in the whole town running in the strawberry stripe. Strawberry's my favorite. What are your thoughts on strawberry ice cream, Dan? We always gotta reach for those topics we haven't talked about yet in our 220 episodes, but what's your take on strawberry ice cream?
So I don't really like chocolate flavored things. Chocolate itself, I'm okay with, but like chocolate flavored ice cream, chocolate flavored cake, I really don't like. It just tastes bitter to me. Like it's like you made the good thing dirty tasting. And I do like pretty much anything fruit flavored. So I'm always eating the vanilla and the strawberry and the Neapolitan. I do like strawberry ice cream quite a bit.
Okay, I got a feeling that might be your take. I can't stand strawberry ice cream.
Really?
Well, in Italy, I had strawberry gelato, and I liked that. I like strawberry yogurt. But whatever it is about, like, the mass-produced pink ice cream, or, like, the pink shake out of McDonald's, I really don't like.
Yeah, I disagree. I think that's usually the best version if it's available. But I will say, my wife gets strawberry ice cream for our house, and if you get like one of the nice brands, it cuts down on the feeling of artificial because it usually will have like little bits of strawberry in it, and it won't be like the Pepto-Bismol pink or whatever. So
right. I could see how that could be good.
But I'll eat it either way. So the turning point is they're going to like rebrand the town and kind of debut it with people from all over the world coming by to check out this cool new effect of food raining from the sky. But of course, it hits its breaking point on the exact day, the exact moment, in fact, that Flint is going to be like the star person debuting this brand new, I don't know if it's actually a theme park or what it is, but like the new town of, it's been rebranded from Swallow Falls to Chew and Swallow, which is what it is in the book too. And then we hit, like, to me, that should be the climax in a normal version of this story. But then we get this insane third act too, Brian, that is like this crazy adventure story where a bunch of the main characters have to go flying into the source of the food storm to try and find the machine and shut down the machine. So now we're in like crazy action movie world with like these set pieces where all of the set pieces are based off of giant food.
Right. So the tourists arrive, then the weather is getting out of control. There's like, it's not just a rain anymore, it's a natural disaster. So it's flood and tornado territory that's causing harm and putting people in peril. And so these adventurers have to go up into the sky, into the storm, and disrupt it.
Yeah, and so some of the images we get of this food going bad, it's like I think maybe the iconic image of the book. I don't know. One of the ones that I always think of, I guess like the big pancakes is another one I think of, and of course the meatballs falling. But you get this tornado of spaghetti, which is just a terrific image. And you get like, of course, a couple of references to Wizard of Oz during the tornado. And the food also spreads to landmarks. They even like lampshade it. It's like, oh, it's going all around the world. Funny how it's hit the big landmarks first, because if you're going to show something around the world, you would show the Eiffel Tower and you would show the Great Wall of China. And that's exactly what they do. And then they kind of make a gag about that. So lots of that type of fourth wall, or I don't even meta jokes, I guess you would call it.
And I was impressed. I did go back and read the book, and that they took most of these centerpieces and had them show up somewhere in the movie.
Exactly,
like
yeah.
the pancakes that crushed the school, and there's a Jello castle kind of randomly in the book, which it doesn't really say fell from the sky. It's just like there was Jello, and on the page there's a Jello castle. And that's explained in the film that Flint like carved it for the girlfriend.
Yeah. And it's a really cool design because it's like Jello has got kind of this distinct shininess to it and this jiggle to it. And so just watching it in action is really cool. Because they're bouncing off of it too, like all around. So it's cool physics stuff too. And then you get they belly flop onto the Jello and like very slowly stink in and can't get out.
And
it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I thought this Jello castle scene also it embodied the weird tone of the film, that it's kind of like beautiful and impressive, but also inconvenient and verging into off-putting.
Yeah, horrifying and gross too. Yeah.
It's almost like the other side of the coin of the Elsa ice castle. It's like this is the character cutting loose and realizing the full extent of their powers and making this thing, but is this a good thing to be doing?
Right. And it's like, yeah. Another thing I want to say is, since we brought up the Jello Castle, is the romance in this actually works better than your typical animated movie romance, I think, personally. It's not the best one out of any animated movie. Like, I don't know, I like Tangled more than this, for example. But I was kind of invested in Flint not blowing it with Sam, and the fact that she has to get on his weird and nerdy level, because that's what she really is inside too. And it's like a devolution rather than an evolution in some ways. But yeah, so this climax, they go up to this cloud, and it's like they're in a cave because it's up in the sky, but it's like completely ensconced in food. And so they're like swinging with grappling hooks that's hanging donuts, and like they got to traverse down peanut brittle caves and all this stuff like that. And I really like the design of this section. You also get just some of the weirdest gags in the movie in this section. The weirdest one being the character who's Baby Brent, who's Andy Samberg, who's like the guy still riding on fame of being a baby mascot when he was a kid. Embraces being a chicken. He like gets into a rotisserie chicken and like absorbs its power and spends the rest of the movie walking around with the body of a rotisserie chicken.
Right.
And I don't know who came up with this, but it's just weird and brilliant.
So the food is also alive now, which I had forgotten happened in this first one. That the food is moving around of its own accord. There's like pizza slice TIE fighters chasing them through the typhoon. And then, these rotisserie chickens, headless chickens, but walking around cooked and attacking them. So somehow we've crossed that barrier now. It's not just food made from the water. It is living and possibly sentient creatures.
And there's a bit about how Sam is allergic to peanuts. And so if she touches anything that's peanutty, she will have an allergic reaction. And there's like a tense moment where they're traversing a peanut brittle cave.
Oh yeah.
And
they're going on a rope down a tunnel with these spikes sticking out in your eyes. So this was another time that I knew this is a 3D movie.
Oh yeah. And she accidentally gets pricked by the peanut brittle at one point, and then she just starts getting this violent swelling that also for some reason made my skin crawl.
Have you ever been around somebody who had a allergic reaction like this?
Not to this level, no. Have you, Brian?
Yeah. So I've got two stories actually that I'll tell real quick. So in college, I was in a sort of fraternity. It was a music themed fraternity. Like the band kids were in this organization. But we had a girl who was the fraternity sweetheart, and she would make baked goods that we would have at our weekly meetings. And one time she made these like macadamia nut cookies, and one of the brothers bit into a cookie, and then a few minutes later was like, "Are there nuts in these?" And we're like, "What?" He said, "Are there nuts in these?" And we looked at him, and yeah, his tongue was like swollen out of his mouth, and his eyes were closing. And it was pretty crazy how fast it can happen. Like, you think that's just in cartoons, but I've seen it happen in real life.
Wow.
Another time was at the summer camp that we've both worked at, and Dan was in charge of for a while. I was leading a filmmaking camp, and we were filming out in like the tree line outside of a community center, just like not the woods, but like trees on the edge of the property. Like their story was like the Three Little Pigs or something that they wanted to film. And so we needed to have characters look like they were in the woods. And so we went out there, and one of the kids says, "I'm allergic to trees." And I said, "No, you're not. Get out there.
That sounds made up.
You wrote trees in your story. Here is a tree. Just stand in front of the tree." And then, sure enough, their face started swelling up. Like they got these big old welts on their forehead, and they were getting all red. And it's like, oh my God. Okay, go inside, and hopefully I won't be fired.
That's crazy. I've never heard of allergic to trees. That's a new one for me. Wow. I have one of my kids has an allergy. And so it's like kind of annoying because we have to have a EpiPen style thing with us wherever we go. But the only reaction she's ever had is like a mild rash on her face. So, you know, you're better safe than sorry. You wouldn't want her to like go into shock or like lose her breathing. But it also feels like a big inconvenience for something that I'm not sure would even trigger that strong a reaction. But that's no joke. You don't want to mess with allergies, you know?
Like, you know, when I was 7, I got allergy tested for various things, and they told me allergic to milk. And I don't think I am. I think that was a false positive. But at various points in my life, I've tried to cut it out. And when I don't have it, I think like my skin is better. And like, I think there are various reasons not to consume dairy. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know for sure. I have my suspicions that I am not allergic, and I, at certain points in my life, have had it, because dairy is good. Cheese is good, ice cream, but also just like, I don't know, less phlegm, I would say, when you cut out the dairy.
Yeah, I believe it. So the way this story ends is they get to the heart of it, and all of it's very interestingly designed. Like you really get the sense of like, this is a sentient parasite almost that needs to be stopped. And Flint has this USB drive that's supposed to shut down the device, and repeatedly you think he's going to be able to do it, and then something goes wrong. And there's lots of good little gags. This has a version of the joke where the dad is trying to use the computer in time to like email him the virus that'll destroy the thing. The movie Mitchells and versus the Machines that came out a couple of years ago basically had this exact same gag, and I got mad at it because it's exactly the same gag that we have here, and it's pretty much executed with the same rhythm that it is here too. But finally, it seems like he's completely lost it. He loses the USB and all that, and so how can he stop the machine at the very end? And it comes back to the inventions, Brian, from the beginning. He has his spray-on shoes with him. So he sprays the spray-on shoes, which we know is like completely invulnerable, to completely coat the food expunging machine, and it makes the machine explode, and all the food-making magic goes away from the atmosphere. And for a minute, we think Flint has died as part of the explosion of it. Because remember, this was up in the sky and it exploded. So he's going to fall and die, even if he survived the explosions. But then as they're mourning him, you see in this distance, this little cloud coming towards the screen. What could it be? It's a flock of the Ratbirds. The Ratbirds have saved Flint and brought him down. We had Chekhov's Ratbirds from the beginning of the movie that saved the day at the end, Brian. And this always tickles me.
It's well done.
Just like a mile a minute jokes here on Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And it ends with Flint basically accepting that he's talented and original, but he needs to live his life in balance with his dad's more grounded view of the world. So that's Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. It wraps to the credits by like minute 80, which is kind of insane. And then we have this sort of like cool credit sequence that's like a 2D animation thing, Brian, which I thought you would enjoy. I usually like stuff like that.
Yeah, I was a big fan of this. It's like a animated epilogue that shows what the characters are doing after the story proper. And my thesis film has one of these. And then the sequel of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs has one that I felt went on even longer and was like a little more advanced. But I definitely was a fan of these.
So I want to talk Cloudy too. We won't do a full-on recap, but I want to give you my biggest reaction watching it this time, Brian. A new thought that I had. Because this is the first time that I've watched this movie since ChatGPT entered our lives.
Okay.
And I think this is the best movie about AI out of any movie that I've seen, in terms of like AI as it actually is in our world, as a commentary on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in general, it's about big tech, capitalism, overreach, going too far, when you risk losing the impact on the people. But specifically the way that like food, which is ostensibly like a good and valuable, and everything you were saying a few minutes ago, which I thought was very astute about how like food is a very personal and artistic and expressive thing, and turning it into this slop that this machine creates and like churns out for us that like kind of is the thing recognizably, but also just like isn't. It's like an alien, non-human version of it that it more and more and more, and the more it gets, the grosser it becomes. And I don't know, I was getting the feeling of like, this food is kind of like how I feel about AI in general. So that's my hot take, my thesis on this. This is the movie about AI that you should watch if you want to understand AI.
Yeah, I think that's onto something. I don't know what's going to happen with the whole AI thing. I feel like there's a very high chance that it could just be another NFT or metaverse. I think the rich people of the world want to be on top of whatever the new thing turns out to be. I don't 100% believe that we know this is the next big thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I don't think it will fizzle like NFTs, because with NFTs, you could never even really describe what the value of it was, you know? Like if you just tried to explain to a normal person, why do NFTs matter? It sounded like you were an insane person, at least every person that I talked to. AI, I think it's going to have a little bit of a bubble phase. I don't think it's going to be quite as transformative as like the internet was, but I do think it's going to change some things. I think it's going to be like a little more integrated in with day-to-day life, but I don't think it'll fully replace stuff the way that some people are talking about. But I don't know then. Who knows? When you hear about like some of the things it's capable of, it is kind of scary and intimidating. Some of the things are positive, like they're using it to make breakthroughs in medicine and math and research and stuff. And some of it is horrifying. Like, I don't know. It's going to potentially eliminate whole industries. So I'm not going to predict exactly what it is. I don't think you can know right now.
Right. I read, I mean, obviously there's a lot of doomsaying, and I don't know necessarily if that's warranted either. I don't think anybody's got a sense of the full picture yet. We'll have to see where the chips fall. But I saw somebody say that their take on it was AI right now is being used to give the wealthy access to talent while denying the talented access to wealth.
Okay. I kind of see that. Yeah. And that's like mainly thinking about it from the perspective of like creative work, but it does a lot of other stuff too. I think one way that it really is going to be transformative, probably more for the worse than for the better, is education. I know some college teachers who already are saying like they're going back to the drawing board on like you can't even really assign papers anymore, because like students will inevitably use ChatGPT to write much or all of it. Um, I've toyed with it for like doing research and finding references to stuff. And some things it's actually better than Google at. I don't think it's a full replacement. Like I wouldn't use it as my single source the same way I wouldn't really use anything as my single source. But I don't know.
I could see a case where you could use it to learn. Like, I have a text-to-speech app that I use to read Wikipedia articles to me, like their podcasts.
Oh, that's cool.
And I could see how, like, if you were using AI to summarize academic subjects to you, and you could do like your brother Will does and play the podcast at 2 times speed or whatever, and just be like, always have like a running feed of information into your head. I could see how that could be useful and also kind of horrifying, but I don't know. Like, there are ways that could be used and will be used, and it's going to be interesting whatever happens.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. I think there will be a lot of surprising ways, and we're kind of in the Wild West right now, and it'll standardize a little bit.
Back on the subject of the film,
Yeah.
the other day Dan was showing me in Letterboxd, if you're a patron, which is like the highest paid tier, you can swap the poster that you use to represent each movie that you watched. Like, each movie has a default, most commonly used poster, and that's what shows for all the normies. But if you're a patrician member like this, you can see all the possible poster options. And Dan said, well, if you don't want to pay that high price, you can go to this database on the internet, and it shows where all these posters are sucked in from, and you can just look at the list there. And so I was looking at all the possible Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball posters, all the different international posters, and it was interesting to me to see which ones were shown with the title, like the literal translation of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, which is kind of an idiomatic expression, playing on commonly used verbiage in meteorology reports in English. Not a given that that's going to carry over to whatever language you happen to be dubbing the film in. So a lot of movies had titles like It's Raining Meatballs or The Rain of Meatballs. But the German title did go literal, and it's called Wolkisch mit Aussicht auf Fleischbällchen. So cloudy with a chance of small balls of flesh.
That's even more disturbing, and yet it feels in spirit with the film.
Yeah, it feels German. They say, and I'll bet Gavin could give us a good lesson on this, but in the linguistics class that I took, they talked about how once upon a time England was ruled by the Anglo-Saxons, who were basically Germans, and then the Normans, who were like French of Viking descent, came and they took over England, and that was William the Conqueror. And so then you had this status quo for a while where you had these nobles who were of French descent ruling over peasants who were basically of German descent. And so we have a situation in English where the German word for cow is Kuh. So that carries over to English. We call cows cows, but their meat is beef, which is from French boeuf. So it's like, once the animal is on your table, it has an upper class name for the meat that you're eating, which is removed from the lower class name of the animal. And if you see these written out, it probably makes more sense than how I'm describing it now. But it's like we call the animal one thing and we call the meat another thing. But in German, no, same thing. It's like Schweinfleisch is pig meat, pig flesh. They don't beat around the bush in German. They just tell you, straight what it is.
Yeah, there's a recurring meme on parenting forums that's like, I'm going to be devastated when my kid realizes that chicken the meat is the same as the chicken the animal. But it sounds like in German, there would never be any doubt about that.
Right. I think chicken is Huhnfleisch. It's like hen flesh.
Yeah, there you go. That's pretty interesting. So let's talk about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, the sequel. I would just start by saying unnecessary as a sequel. This movie didn't beg for a sequel. It also got a sequel that was produced by Lord and Miller, and I think like they outlined the story, but the screenplay was by different people who did the movies Game Night and then the recent Dungeons and Dragons. And those are two funny movies that I would recommend. But the directors are kind of Sony Animation old hands, not Lord and Miller. It's these guy, Cody Cameron and Chris Pern. So, so this is things where it's kind of like right on the line of, is it a Lord and Miller movie or is it not really a Lord and Miller movie? And it doesn't have quite the same touch to it. It doesn't have quite the same zest and wit and just like a sense that they really figured out how to get the story and the comedy in sync. But it is weird. I will give it that much. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. So the premise in short is that it picks up right after where the first one ended, like literally minutes later, they kind of lampshade it. And this big tech company that's like a stand-in for Apple essentially hires Flint to join their company to be like their creative genius building new inventions for them. And they essentially use him to go out to chew and swallow.
My understanding is, so they did actually abandon the town. They abandoned Chew and Swallow. And right, they stopped the storm, which I guess stopped the weather in the other places, like destroyed the machine in as much as it fell down out of the sky. And so there's not crazy food weather in other parts of the planet. But I think where they go is Chew and Swallow, or if not Chew and Swallow, it's wherever this satellite landed.
Right.
And so what this movie is The Lost World. It's Jurassic Park 2, but instead of going back to the Jurassic Park island, they're going back to the food center.
Yeah.
The original characters have to return to the scene that they originally abandoned because it was crazy and violent and the hubris of man, and they got to now go back and reckon with it in the jungle again. And
the food is taken over, though. So
yeah, the food is alive. The food
is more
is
sentient than ever.
Giant animals, and it's a Jurassic Park sequel.
In fact, like the food has become foodimals is the term they use. So like the food has evolved into animal format. So this had me thinking all sorts of things, Brian. This is kind of like Cars 2, where you're just pondering the ontology of this universe. Does this make Flint a god because his machine created sentient creatures? Where do they get their personality from? Do they have souls? Where do those souls come from? Did it evolve? Is it going to continue to evolve?
Yeah, the first time I saw this, I thought it kind of came out of nowhere that they're alive, but by the end of the first movie, we've got food that's alive. We have those chickens, we have
built up to it.
We have other food creatures, so yeah, I guess it evolves.
Yeah.
Something has survived, as was the slogan of The Lost World, and I think was close to the slogan of this movie. It was like something is left over.
Full disclosure, I've never seen Jurassic Park 2 nor read the book.
Okay. Have you seen any of the other Jurassic Park sequels?
Only Jurassic Park 1.
Okay. Well, that's probably a wise thing to do. I just last week watched 5, 6, and 7, which I had never seen before. And there's just too many. We don't need that many. And 1 is the only really good one, so we basically didn't need any others. But if a film makes $1 billion, like Jurassic Park was the highest grossing film of all time when it came out, until Titanic. So you generate sequels.
So what I'll say about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2 is I liked it more. This was my second time watching it. The first time I watched it, I was expecting disappointment, and I found disappointment. The second time I watched it, I was like, I remember this being kind of disappointing. And then I was really latching on to, first of all, the animation is just at a new level. There's all sorts of weird designs and colors and effects. And it's like even more surreal. It made me think of the Trolls movies, Brian. I don't know if you've seen those, but they really lean into being stylized and colorful. And it's got a lot of that going on here. And the creatures, the food creatures, are just so strange and well designed. There's like a Big Mac, but the sesame seeds are eyes. That one gave me the heebie-jeebies. There's like these sentient pickles. There's this little strawberry that's like one of the minions from Despicable Me. And the climax is actually set in like the headquarters for this corporation. And it's got like this very bizarre futuristic vibe to it. So you got like robots battling food monsters in like a sci-fi setting. It's just so strange. And I was getting more of a kick out of it. Like the story itself, everything that we were saying about how like the first film's got kind of like a lot of nuance and ambivalence. This one kind of left turns on, and it's kind of more where you expect it's going to go from the start, where the big corporation is bad and treacherous, and you just need to love the people around you.
Right. Don't leave your friends behind.
That's the theme gesture in the first act, and that stays consistent throughout, as opposed to the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, which finds nuance in the themes that it suggests towards the beginning of the film, and ambivalence. And so the story itself is kind of disappointing, not as rich, but as an experience, I came around on it.
Right. I skew slightly positive too. I like that James Caan is back. Oh, everybody's back.
Yeah.
And well, except Mr. T. I think it's Terry Crews now.
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah.
But still good. And I like James Caan like befriends the minion pickles. He's like trying to have them be his sentience. He's trying to have them be his surrogate son. And so he's like teaching these gibberish speaking pickles to fish. And you just have the deadpan of James Caan. I was chuckling.
And so when I watched this the first time, I was like, we don't need any more. But now that I've seen the book and I know that it goes to outer space and I have a little bit more appreciation for it just getting weirder and weirder, I want to see a third one where they A, go to outer space, and B, it's just even more insane than the second one. I don't know quite how they would do it, but I would love to see it. So Brian, why don't you speak a little bit about the end credits sequence, which you seem to be fond of?
Yeah, this movie ends with another one of these animated epilogues, and I was vibing. It just has scenes and of different styles. I really like end credits. Just end credits that kind of continue the story a bit, show our heroes triumphant, and can get even a little bit more experimental in the visuals. Like, show things that would be harder to show in maybe the main film. Like, we got this in Series of Unfortunate Events and stuff.
Well, and one thing I noticed about it is it it's a little bit more multimedia to it. Like there's different styles more so than the first one did. And I really admired that. Like you have a claymation shot and you have like different animated styles throughout it. So I think it's a pretty nifty epilogue bit.
Yeah, it stuck
Um,
out to me even more than in the first one, and I liked the one that ended the first one.
yeah. All right. So, Brian, we've made it through. Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs, Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs 2, and then our prelude stuff. So I think I'm ready to rate. What about you?
Yes, I'm ready.
So Is It Good is our signature section where we each give the movies a rating on our 8-point goodness scale, ranging from very not good, which is a 1 out of 8, to our masterpiece rating, toward a good, which would be an 8 out of 8. Let's start with the stuff that we kind of opened with, Brian. The Big Swallow 1901. Is it good?
It's hard to rate these super early films that are a minute long, but if it delivers what it promises, you can't rate it too low. I mean, it's creative and it does something new that people may not have even thought of before. So I think I'm going to land on a 5 for this one. A good. Where are you at?
Yeah, I tend to be at a 4 by default for like these actualities, unless they bring something special. And the more special they bring, the higher I'm willing to go. So I think this does bring something special. I'm going to also give this one a good because it's got just the strangeness of the getting eaten and the breaking the fourth wall with the seeing the camera and the cameraman get swallowed and all that. It's fun. So now let's talk about what is the rubber head one called, Brian?
The Man with the Rubber Head.
So is the man with the rubber head good?
I think I'm going to give this one a 4. It's cool. It's kind of funny. It's not quite as fully realized as Big Swallow, where it's like, it's less winking than that. Less, oh, you get it. You understand the conceit that we're doing. It's just like, the head is off my shoulders, and it can go big and it can go small, and it's like a little magic trick. So I think a 4 for this one. Good-ish.
I'm gonna agree with your thoughts, but still have it just land softly into good 5 because I just love a Méliès trick short where you just got some idea and it executes that idea and it engages you for the whole time. So soft, good 5 out of 8 on that one for me as well. Then let's get to King Size Canary, the Tex Avery short. Brian, is King Size Canary good?
I think I'll give this one a 7. Exceptionally good because it's structured so engagingly. It literally grows, it escalates and builds, and the gags are always competently pulled off. And I love the ending where there's nowhere to go from here. Literally, we've outpaced the planet. And so all you can do is say, we're out of the stuff. And we leave the characters now in this world, this doomed world. Where do they go from here? We don't know. We don't have to worry about it. They're stuck with what they've done. What about you?
So I only have a small handful of shorts that I've given the masterpiece rating 8 out of 8 to, either on my site or just letterbox ratings or here on the goods on the podcast. I'm right on the fence with this one. It's one of my favorite Looney Tunes asterisk shorts. I always thought of as Looney Tunes. Now I'm not sure exactly what the categorization is, but this is kind of up there. This is one of my favorites because it's both got this very funny first act, and then it just gets into the more and more surreal kind of postmoderny, like just bringing things to its ultimate conclusion. So I'm right on the edge. I'm going to land, I guess, for now at a 7 with the possibility of bumping it up to an 8 as I kind of revisit more of these classic shorts and get a better context for them and determine whether, yes, this is obviously a 5-star, 8 out of 8 toward a good masterpiece, or maybe just a tiny notch below it. My one disappointment is I wanted them to do just a little bit more with getting bigger and bigger and bigger, involving the dog and the bird, because it sets it up to have the four of them competing. But the way that Avery goes with it is like, we're just gonna, the very final gag is just gonna be the mouse and the cat growing forever and ever, which maybe that's the right choice. I don't know, but that was just my one thought. So
This isn't
no,
this
go
isn't
ahead.
100% related, but one of my favorite things about Zootopia, the first one, was that all
Uh-huh.
the animals are the size that animals are, which means a whole bunch of
Yeah.
different sizes. So there's mouse people, and there's rabbit people, and there's polar bear people, and they're all kind of coexisting, but at their vastly different scales. And the way the infrastructure works for that, I thought was so cool. It's like the Hobbit human town of Bree, but times 10, because you've got all these different sizes of beings that have to live there. And I am excited that the second one is coming because I want to see the animation in that.
Yeah, I really hope they embrace weirdness. I think they will,
I,
but I'm with you on
I
that.
think they will. We talked about it back in the day, not in any pod, I don't think, but I wondered, why is it only mammals? We don't see anything that's
Mm,
not a mammal in the whole movie. And the first thing that they told us about the second one is there's a snake. So there's a reptile, something that's
mm.
not a mammal. So they're definitely opening some new doors.
Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me if it ends up being an immigration parable. The first one was very much a racism parable, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Um, all right. On to the main event. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, 2009, the feature-length film. Brian, is it good?
I'm right on the border of a 6 and a 7, and you always speak about it so highly that maybe it deserves a 7. I think I'm going to give it the highest 6. It's almost exceptional for me. I do like all the different places that it goes, that it's not just a one note story. You know, you've got this ambitious inventor who wants to be accepted, but that's not the only thing that's important. It's like, yes, celebrate what's unique about you and pursue your dreams, but like don't lose sight on the bigger picture or what's normal or what's good for society. So it's complex, and I do think it's well done. Maybe it deserves the 7. Right now, I'm sitting at the highest 6. It is zany, and like the physical movement of the set pieces is compelling, and you're able to follow everything, and the pacing of the jokes is high. The character design is pretty simplistic in comparison to the environments, but I guess that works. It's not distracting like in The Good Dinosaur or something. So it's good. I recommend it. Very good. 6. You don't shake a stick at a 6. Where are you at, Dan, though? I think you're going to be higher than that.
Yeah. So I want to start by saying, and this will kind of give context, I have Into the Spider-Verse, the first Spider-Verse movie, at a 7 out of 8. That is an exceptionally good. And my main reason for that is kind of baked into part of what I like about the Lord and Miller movies. And when I say the reason for that, I mean the reason it's not a masterpiece, because it's one of the best assembled and best told animated movies I've ever seen. And that reason is it has to do with the what I've called the postmodernism kind of imprecisely. So like you couldn't make Into the Spider-Verse without movies like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man doing the story normal and right and telling it in a way that really grips you and gets in your brain and your heart. Because Into the Spider-Verse is all about like multiverses where different versions of the Spider-Man origin story happens. And so like the only reason you can do that is if everybody knows and understands the emotional architecture of the Spider-Man stories. Like as in the way that Sam Raimi tells it. If it weren't for that, then you couldn't do it. But Sam Raimi's Spider-Man can stand alone. So that makes me the Sam Raimi Spider-Man story more and appreciate it more, it's just slightly more than I do what is pretty objectively one of the greatest animated movies ever made, you know? So I kind of face that dilemma, but a lesser version on Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, because it uses what I would consider like almost shortcuts to jokes and to character development, because it can just be like, you know what the character beat is here, so just assume that that happens and that's the joke, or that's like the thing that happens, you know? And it's not lazy. Nothing about this movie is lazy, but it kind of operates in a space and a storytelling language that has a ceiling on it. And it's a very high ceiling for me, but it is a ceiling. And so does that hold back this movie, which is kind of, it's not like directly bound to a story the same way that Into the Spider-Verse is bound to the Spider-Man story, you know? But it is bound to us understanding the beats and understanding the rhythms of stories. That's kind of what makes it so fun to watch. But again, it's almost a limitation. So I think for that reason, I'm going to be like the tiniest fraction of a hair on the side of a 7 rather than a masterpiece rating, because I just love this movie so much. It's one of my favorite movies. I adore it. It's so dense with gags. You're going to be laughing so much if you've never seen it before. Really one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. And I don't say that lightly. Like I laugh so much during this movie. And the animation is so good. It's so energetic, but also just like well designed and colorful and well framed, well directed and composed in a way that like is unusual for, I don't know, animated in general, movies in general. Like there's cool designs and shots and lighting. And it's just a joy to watch. And it's got all these textures and layers of like pulling in references and styles of things that you know, but like just in an innovative way that you wouldn't expect it. And it flows so well and so fast. It's just a treat. It's just a delight. And it's smart and heartfelt. Like it's got a good father-son relationship. It's got a good romantic interest plot. It's got characters you kind of understand. And it's just got this surreal energy to it. Just this like kind of grotesque element to it that just gives it this extra bite, this extra flavor that kind of puts it over the edge. So like I said, I almost never give out masterpiece ratings, and I'm really close to doing it here. But I'm going to land just on this side of the masterpiece rating. Maybe next time I watch it, I'll bite the bullet. I don't know. For now, it's the highest 7 that I can give. That's a 7 out of 8, and exceptionally good on the is a good scale.
There's a scene when Flint gets caught up in the spaghetti tornado, and he's like hopping from obstacle to obstacle of the Wizard of Oz people going by, and he starts climbing towards the ground. And the way that he like exits the tornado and is back on the ground, you got to see it. But the way that that's handled is really good, because it's like seems really intense, but then he, you know, steps off into the regular situation of being on the ground, and it's like nothing has actually happened. He's unharmed. He emerges from the tornado unscathed, and it's like the classic Looney Tune construction site where many perilous things could have happened, but he's come out of it all right.
It's just there's so many moments like that, and I don't know, everything is just fully formed and realized. It's my favorite Lord and Miller film. I'd have it just a hair above Into the Spider-Verse and just a little bit above Lego Movie as well, personally. Maybe it's just because that's the first one I saw, but I think it still remains my favorite. I think it kind of perfects their formula right out of the gate for me. So I really love it. It's easily in my top 100 favorite movies overall.
Lego Movie, maybe we'll have to talk someday. I just really love how in that one it's like any frame you could pause and it looks like a Lego set in a shoebox. Like, I don't know how they got it so close to looking like real, like they took a photo of a Lego set.
That one's pretty ingenious too. Yeah, that would be an interesting discussion. Some of the things that one does with animation just groundbreaking in incredible ways. Yeah. All right, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, Brian. Is it good?
Think I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 8, a good-ish. I actually think it's better than most of the Jurassic Park sequels, but it very much owes something to the Jurassic Park sequels of, okay, you got to go back to the island. Something was left behind. We got to salvage, it wasn't enough to just abandon what we left in our Frankensteinian wake. We got to still reckon with the legacy. And like it's still funny and still weird and the food still looks good and there's punchlines like there's a leak in the boat and there's one of those onion scallion things that's called a leak and it's sitting in the boat. So it still has, the gag density and is still creative and the cast came back. So it's pretty good. I'm almost to a 5, honestly. It's like I felt reasonably positive. It didn't need to get made, but it's okay that it did. Where are you at?
So the first time I saw it, I actually wrote a review about it and I gave it a 4, a good-ish, as we call it on the podcast. And I liked it more the second time through. It does pretty much everything worse from a storytelling perspective. It's not quite as funny. It's not quite as gag dense. The gags don't hit as quite a high rate. The characters aren't as well developed. The villain isn't quite as menacing. Although I do quite like the design of like the Steve Jobs guy. He's got like these noodle spaghetti arms that are fascinating to watch. Um, and yeah, I'm just not invested in it in the same way. But the reason that I actually am going to come around on positive on it is just because it makes up for it by just being weird and inventive as hell. Just everything it's doing, some and strangeness in this sentient food universe in a way that I just appreciate. It's fun to watch, even if it's less good as a proper piece of cinema. And I kind of like that. I'm glad that it's like, you know what? I'm not going to be as good as the original. I'm not even going to do the Toy Story 2 thing where I managed to like take the original and invert it because the first one kind of already was doing its inversion. Like you can't really undo that without just being trite. So F it. We're just going to make the weirdest food creatures you've ever seen and bright colors and a escalating sense of surreality as it goes. And I like that. So I'm just going to, I think I'm only a notch above you, but that it gets it into low, good 5 out of 8 territory for me. So I really enjoyed it this second time through. And those are our cloudy movies, Brian, as well as a little detour into some earlier big, small films. But what are we going to be watching next week for our last week of Maxi-Month, Mini-Month?
So, as we often do when we end the theme month, we'll talk about what else could we have watched that fits the theme because there are so many options. Now, even more than some other theme months that I've done, I'm kicking myself. Oh, there's so many things we could do. Almost tempted to do like in movie month where we just blew it up and made it truly a Maxi-Month and had it go beyond the bounds. But I don't think we need to do that. I think we can cap it here. But definitely there are options of what I could say next. What I am going to say is let's watch Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and it had 2 sequels, one of which was theatrical, Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, and then there was a direct-to-video, Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves. So
Cool.
let's watch those. There are obviously other key texts we could discuss, and maybe they'll get name dropped when we reconvene, but that's what's on my heart. To quote Delilah, I want it wouldn't be complete if we ended Maxi-Month without talking Honey, I Shrunk the Kids as far as I'm concerned. That's probably the first shrinking movie that I watched, and I think it belongs. So let's do that.
We can talk through that. I think that's a great idea, Brian. I've never seen I probably have seen these honestly, but it's been so long that this will be. I'll be pretty much going in fresh. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you,
All
Brian,
right.
and I will see you next week.
This was fun. Join us again, listeners.